Pete Buttigieg is running for president in 2028. Now, he hasn't announced it yet, but trust me, he's running, and I'm going to tell you why I know he's running, and then I want to break down whether he can win or not, the pros and cons. So, let's start with the why. So, Pete Buttigieg, who you probably know, former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, ran for president in 2020, spent 4 years as Joe Biden's Secretary of Transportation, was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, earlier this week. Now, why would someone like a Pete Buttigieg just pop into Iowa to give a speech? Because he's running for president in 2028, and Iowa is very likely to have one of the earliest votes, as it often does. Remember, there are no coincidences in American politics. Pete Buttigieg didn't pick Iowa out of a hat to give a speech to a group largely filled with military veterans. Trust me on that one, folks. And in that speech that he gave to about 1,600 people in eastern Iowa, he said a couple things that I think are worth noting because I think it indicates the kind of campaign he's going to run and the message he's going to run on. He said, quote, "The American people bow to no king." Trust me, you're going to hear that line again, whether or not Donald Trump is on the ballot in 2028, which I don't think he will be, but the American people bow to no king. I think you're going to hear a fair amount of that. He also said that Democrats need to, quote, "talk about what we are determined to build, not just what we are trying to block." Again, you are going to hear that again, and I think that is a very smart message if you're a Pete Buttigieg, because I do think, and I've talked about this before, I do think Democrats in 2016 and in 2024 made a huge mistake in that they basically made the entire campaign, well, you're not going to vote for Donald Trump, are you? Right? That was Hillary Clinton's message, and it was Kamala Harris's message too, really. And people did vote for Donald Trump. He's a two-term president now. So I like what we are determined to build, not just what we are trying to block. So yes, Democrats don't agree with Donald Trump's direction for the country, but also, yes, they have a positive, proactive vision for the country, and it is fill in the blank. Now, Buttigieg didn't really get into that, but I think that's rhetorically the right space to occupy. So, look, if you combine the trip to Cedar Rapids, the Going on the Flagrant podcast, sort of a podcast in the manosphere, which Democrats think they got beaten up in by Donald Trump in 2024. Pete Buttigieg announcing that he would not run for Senate from his new home state of Michigan. He and his husband moved to Michigan a few years ago. That he would not run for that open Senate seat. You add all those things up, and it seems pretty obvious to me that he's going to run for president in 2028. And honestly, and I'll get into this in a minute, I think he is a top-tier candidate, maybe one of the 3 or 4 people most likely to wind up as the Democratic nominee. But before I get into that, and I am going to do a full pros and cons list in this video of Pete Buttigieg as presidential candidate, I want to ask you for something. I want to ask you to become a subscriber to this channel. We have over 82,000 people who have signed up. I hope you will join our ranks. I'm going to tell you why, and it's around one word, independent, and I'm going to define independent in 2 ways. First, I am independent from billionaires who own big media companies and the corporate media conglomerates who also own legacy media. It's just me, company of one, right? Just my views, unvarnished. I'm going to tell you what I think at all times. I'm not going to worry about what that means for the corporate profits because I ain't got any corporate profits. Second way I'm independent. I'm independent from the two parties. I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat. I spent more than 20 years working for big media as a political reporter, Washington Post, CNN most recently. And I left that because I believed that I could call balls and strikes no matter what uniform the batter at the plate was wearing, just as well as an independent news creator, and probably better than working for a big media company. So I hope you can support me again. It is free and it is easy. Just hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Okay, so let's do a pros and cons on Pete Buttigieg, the presidential candidate. Let's do pros first. I got my handy dandy Post-it notes. Pros. He's really a naturally gifted political athlete. I would say Pete Buttigieg and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are the two most naturally gifted political athletes in the potential 2028 Democratic field. What do I mean by political athletes? I mean, they do a lot of the things you need to do to run for office successfully, and they do them well and with relative ease. So Buttigieg is a really good debater. If you go back, watch some of the 2020 debates with a bazillion Democratic primary candidates, I think he won every one of those debates. He's really good on his feet. And that goes into being a good debater, but he's good on his feet. He's good at taking questions. He's good at bantering with the media. He is a very bright guy, right? He's, and that could be a con too, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but he's a very bright guy who sort of is, up to speed on lots of things, can speak intelligently and thoughtfully on lots of things. He's young. He's 43 right now. He was in his late 30s when he ran for president in 2020. And for a party that just nominated an 82-year-old guy and saw the perils of that and is now going through the situation caused, at least in part, by this book about Joe Biden and whether he should or should not have run, I think a young guy is going to be very appealing. Buttigieg has done it before, right? So he ran for president in 2020. He won the Iowa caucuses in 2020. He was one of the big stories of that race before the race got shut down because of COVID. So having done it before does matter. You know the things that you need to do better. You know the things that you already do well. Along those same lines, he's going to be able to raise a ton of money, and he's going to put good organizations in place in early states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. Again, that alone doesn't win you the nomination, but knowing that you can raise the tens, probably hundreds of millions you're going to need and put a good organization of good campaign staff who know what they're doing in place in these early states and nationally, it does matter. Okay, the cons. Pete Buttigieg is gay. He is married to a man. They have kids. They live in Michigan. If you look at any poll when people are asked, would someone's sexuality influence how you vote for them, people will say no. They will say, of course, no problem voting for a gay man. Color me skeptical on that. Now, I don't know how big a chunk of people it will be who won't vote for Pete Buttigieg because he's gay in a primary or a general election, but there is a percentage. And I will say, even in a Democratic primary, there will be a percentage of people who, number one, won't vote for him because he's gay, and number two, won't vote for him because they are worried that him being gay could make him a less appealing general election nominee to people outside the Democratic base. Now, again, I don't know how big a percentage of people that is in the Democratic primary process or in the general election, but I know it's a non-zero percentage, and that will be something Buttigieg will have to deal with. Number two, he is connected to an unpopular administration. Joe Biden left office not popular. Kamala Harris lost the presidency in 2024. Buttigieg was a prominent face and cabinet secretary in that administration. He's going to have to find a way to kind of separate himself from Joe Biden. I will say he was asked about Biden and whether Biden stayed in the race too long at this event in Iowa earlier this week, and he said maybe, and he added, in hindsight, I think most people would agree that's the case, meaning Biden stayed in the race too long. So he's starting to kind of move away from Biden. He's going to have to do more of that. Another potential con. The transportation system in this country is not currently kicking ass. Obviously, we have Newark Airport. We've had the incidents with air traffic controllers at Reagan National Airport in D.C. Now, liberals will say, well, that's just Donald Trump and his administration. I'm not sure that you can get away with it that easily. Buttigieg was in charge of, he was the head of the Department of Transportation. So when we have big transportation infrastructure issues, I do think he's going to have to answer for some of those things in a Democratic primary. People are going to say, you were in charge of this. Why are these things happening? He'll blame Trump, but will that sell? And then the last thing, and I mentioned this earlier, and the last con is, I do think Buttigieg has a little bit of smartest guy in the room vibes to him. The kid who sits in the front of the class and is like, teacher, call on me. Or is like, teacher, you forgot to assign us homework over the weekend. Do you have any? Right? Do people want that in a president? Like, you want the president to be smart, right? But do people want it to be like the smartest kid in the class who knows the answer and tells everyone he knows the answer? I don't know, right? I mean, I think that's a question that Buttigieg will have to they will have to find a way to address that, maybe not directly, but address it as he campaigns. But look, I think he is running. I think barring some major catastrophe, which, knock on wood, does not happen in his life, I think he is full speed ahead to the 2028 race. I think he is a major contender. I think his pros and his cons, as I've detailed, they are both there. But I always bet on good natural athletes in politics and in sports. And Buttigieg is a really good natural athlete who has done it before and knows what it takes. And I think that's of critical import. So this is one of a series of breakdowns I'm going to do on 2028 candidates, Republican and Democrat. Hope you like them. Ask you to do a few things. As I mentioned earlier in the video, subscribe. If you've made it this long in this video, trust me, you're going to like the rest of the content I'm making. I'm making a ton of videos, 8 videos a week. I'm doing a live stream every Friday where I answer questions you all ask. Subscribe. You can also like and comment on this video. That helps me with the YouTube algorithm, get my stuff out to people who are not currently subscribers but might be interested in this sort of content. And last but certainly not least, do me a favor. Word of mouth matters. Being an evangelist for this kind of stuff matters. If you like this independent media content I am creating, talking about politics every single day, tell a friend. Tell somebody you see in the grocery store. Tell somebody you see on the sidelines of your kid's game. Hey, check this guy out. I think you'll like it. It's free, people. Subscribe and take care. See you tomorrow.